What's going on, everybody? I'm Joom, and welcome back to Shotmakers. I gotta be honest with y'all. I shot an episode earlier today, plan on editing it and getting it out before tonight's action. Unfortunately, that couldn't happen, and that's probably for good reason, because tonight was awesome. Tonight was actually ridiculous. With the two game fives that happened tonight, I couldn't plan. I did not expect what happened tonight in those game fives. And that's good. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about two women hoopers who I find to be shot makers. Though we're not talking about their play. They got other things going on with them. And I want to highlight them a little bit. But then also, we get to introduce a brand new segment to the show. And I guess everything is new to the show because this is a new show. But we get to introduce the What's in the Bag segment, which is me just answering a couple of the mailbag questions that came in last week's episode. So stick around. Let's get it rolling. To get it started, let's talk about the SOD, the shot maker of the day. The shot maker of the day is a moment for me to highlight a player, past or present, who either on this night had a really incredible scoring night or is doing some really fire stuff right now. And because we're in the NBA playoffs and the WNBA season kicks off in a couple of weeks, it makes a lot of sense to stay present, and that's what I'm gonna do. The shot maker of the day today is Fred VanVleet, who has had back-to-back games where he scored 8 of 13 shots from the field against the Warriors. In Game 4, he hit 8 of his 13 shots, all 8 being from 3, and he had a chance to setting that game to overtime with a shot that barely missed. Like, barely missed. Like, everyone in the bar, all of my friends were like, yo, did that go in? Barely missed. It had me questioning, did he just have another child? Because if you remember back in 2019 in the NBA Finals when he was with the Raptors going against the Warriors, then he had a kid and all of a sudden he became superhuman. And that's exactly what he showed in Game 4. But he carried it into Game 5 and also shot 8 of 13 from the field. This time he went 4 of 6 from the three-point line. Didn't do most of his damage from the three-point line, but still every shot that he made felt like a missile drop. And a game that the Rockets utterly destroyed the Warriors from the first quarter up until the fourth quarter. Fred VanVleet was the best player on the floor tonight. And there's an argument that he was the best player on the floor in Game 4. The one difference there was that the Warriors won Game 4 and the Rockets won Game 5. If Fred VanVleet was showing up like this from the start of this series, I don't know if the Warriors would be leading this series right now. But that leads us into what actually happened tonight. Game 5, Warriors were up 3-1. They come in here to Houston feeling good about themselves. They just outlasted the Rockets in a really close game. But if I'm the Rockets, I would have felt really good about how game 4 ended because it came down to the last second shot and they couldn't really stop our two best guys. And given Jalen Green is supposed to be their best scorer, but Fred VanVleet is the one who has the most experience, and Alperen Sengun was the all-star this season. They couldn't really stop them. And we know that they can't really stop Amen Thompson if he's hitting from the field. So I would have felt really good. However, going into this game and what I said in our earlier video that's never going to make it out here, but I had said that I expected the Warriors to win this game because they had the experience, they had the superstar power behind them, they had Steph Curry and they had Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green, plus the coaching from Steve Kerr. It made too much sense for me that the Warriors would boggle down, focus, and immediately snuff out the life that the Rockets had. And man, was I wrong. They were up 20 points halfway through that first quarter, had 40 points by the end of that first quarter, finished the first half with 76 points, and the Warriors are barely touching 50. Steph couldn't get anything going, Jimmy couldn't get anything going, Draymond couldn't do anything, Brandon Pazinski couldn't do anything. The Warriors starters were actually bad, like horrible. The only reason they scored as many points as they scored tonight was because their bench unit showed up. If the bench unit doesn't show up, I don't know if the Warriors break 70 points tonight. It was bad. Shout out Moses Moody. Shout out Pat Spencer. Shout out even that guy Key who came in and couldn't make a layup to save his life, but he still provided some energy to keep them relatively hovering around in that fourth quarter. But the story's not about the Warriors. The story is absolutely about what the Rockets have done over these last two games that gave them the confidence that, hey, we can beat these Warriors. We talked about how they were defending Steph in games 1 and 2 and games 3. We talked about Steph's brilliance and how Steph was able to overcome that in game 3. But look, these Rockets are serious. These Rockets are real. They're making it really rough and tough for the Warriors. And there's a chance that the Warriors blow this 3-1 lead. I don't think they will. I think that they get back to Golden State in game 6 and they close the deal. But If the shots aren't falling, it's the second game in a row where Steph was held below 20 points. If the shots aren't falling for Steph, the shots aren't falling for Jimmy, if the shots aren't falling for Brandon, it's going to look really tough for them boys. So I'm excited. I'm intrigued to see how this goes. Now, the main event of the night, Lakers versus the Wolves in LA. This is game five. I personally did not expect the Wolves to be up 3-1. And I don't think anyone but Minnesota, anyone but the Wolves Nation would have expected that the Wolves would be up this big on the Lakers. I was wrong, and I apologize for that. Them Wolves is hungry. And they showed it. They showed it this entire series. In game one, they blew out the Lakers. In game two, they almost stole that game. In game three, it was the Ant show. In game four, it was the Nas Reed and Ant show. In game five, it was the Rudy Gobert show. Rudy Gobert had perhaps his best playoff series ever. And he's a four-time defensive player of the year. Rudy Gobert had 27 and 24 tonight, 27 points, 24 rebounds. He hadn't scored over 10 points in any game of this series prior till tonight, and the guy put up 27 points and 24 boards. Yeah, it was cooked for the Lakers, and we should have known that. We should have known that when the shots weren't falling for LeBron, shots weren't really falling for Luka, shots weren't falling for Austin Reeves. Rui Hachimura, in my opinion, was the only Lakers who can go without reproach tonight. He's the only one who showed up and played their roles to the T. Everyone else is y'all gotta figure it out. Luka remained a cone. Austin Reeves remained a cone. LeBron did his best defensively, but it wasn't enough. And no one had an answer for what Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert were doing in the paint. They got everything and anything that they wanted. And had 40 points in the last game. He didn't really do all that well tonight. He only had 5 made shots and missed 11 of his three-point attempts. He missed all 11 of his three-point attempts. So he had to rely on the other guys. And the other guys showed up in ways that the Lakers just don't have the luxury of having. If your two best guys and Luka and LeBron can't produce for you, you're never going to win a game. And that's what we saw tonight. That's kind of what we saw this entire series. And I'm ecstatic for what the Wolves can do next. If the Warriors close the deal, the Wolves get to play the Warriors. And I'm favoring the Wolves in that series because they are the better team. They're the deeper team. Of course, the Warriors would have a slight edge in star power, but this Anthony Edwards kid, I think he's demanding our respect. Someone made the claim that he might be etching his way into the top five players in today's current game. And if he takes down LeBron, Luka, and Steph and Jimmy and Draymond in consecutive series with the chance of facing either the MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or the MVP runner-up in Nikola Jokic or the duo of Kawhi Leonard and James Harden, and beating those guys, this might be one of the best playoff runs by a superstar we've ever seen. So I'm really intrigued to see how far they go. But for the Lakers, it's looking real tough for y'all. I don't think it was an easy feat getting to the finals after making that drastic of a change midseason when you got Luka over from the Mavericks and sent Anthony Davis to Dallas. That's a really hard hill to climb midseason, but it's Luka, it's LeBron, it's Austin Reeves. That star power was supposed to work. At least work past the first round. No one had the Wolves winning this round outside of Minnesota fandom. We was wrong. We was dead wrong. In fact, I was wrong because in my earlier video, I had the Lakers beating the Wolves tonight and losing in game six to the Wolves. I didn't expect this. And at some point, the Wolves were in firm driver's seat. The Lakers were able to claw back and make it a tight game where they were trading leads at some point. But man, they had no answer for Rudy. They had no answer for Julius Randle. And ultimately, they just had no answer for Chris Finch's coaching. Chris Finch outcoached JJ Redick tonight, and I don't think people are talking about that enough. Finchie outcoached JJ Redick in this series, and it was apparent in game four where JJ leaves his starters in for the entire second half. Not one single starter got to catch his breath. And it ultimately burned them. Tonight, it burned them as well because at some point, Maxi Kleber's in the game. Now, we know that infamous bar that's like, it's the fourth quarter. I'm screaming, why is Nick Batum in the game? Honestly, I think everyone sighed and gasped when they saw Maxi Kleber in the game in the fourth quarter, asking that same question. Why is Maxi Kleber in the game? He had no business being in there, especially since the guy hadn't played since January 25th. The guy hadn't played since January 25th when he's still with the Mavericks. He never suited up for the Lakers. And all of a sudden, JJ has a bright idea to play him tonight. That made no sense to me. The Lakers didn't play Jackson Hayes for real. I don't know if Trey Jemison is still on their roster, but he would have been way better than Max Kleber tonight. Forget Trey. They had Alex Lynch sitting on the bench, who Alex Lynch's not that good. I can agree to that. But he would have been way better than throwing in a Maxi Kleber who has not touched the court since January 25th. JJ, what's going on with you, buddy? So the Lakers are done. And for somebody, not me, that's really sad. They got a lot of decisions to make in this offseason. LeBron now is saying that he's not sure about his future. I'm really intrigued to see how this goes for them. Moving on, I want to talk about a couple of women hoopers who happen to be shot makers, in my opinion, but also are really dope and incredible guards to watch and root for. Malaysia Fulwiley, who just transferred from South Carolina to LSU, and Kennedy Carter, who was with the Chicago Sky last WNBA season, but for some reason is not on a WNBA team currently. Malaysia Fulwiley, if you've ever seen her play, she's a quick, twitchy guard. She has a crazy handle package and has a phenomenal layup package. Usually, she can get to her shot at any time. Unfortunately for South Carolina, that time never really came in that national championship game against UConn, where South Carolina got embarrassed. Malaysia transferred shortly after that moment, and now we're here where she's going to LSU, where she gets to pair alongside Flage. And I just wanted to mention that I don't think she should have transferred. I get why she transferred though, because Malaysia just finished her sophomore season. She is really good, one of the best guards in the nation. However, she was coming off the bench for South Carolina. And it makes a lot of sense. South Carolina was a team that was built on the defensive end, built on teamwork and playmaking, and they haven't really had a phenomenally dominant scorer since Asia Wilson. So they've been a win by committee team, and Malaysia Fawali commands to be a lead guard. South Carolina hasn't really had that in some time. I think she could have been that for South Carolina, but I do think that Dawn Staley did what she was supposed to do in terms of getting her off the bench, allowing her to provide that scoring kick off the bench. And then also when she was in the game, her and Chloe Kitts had a really incredible two-man game that ultimately didn't account for anything versus UConn, but we saw it throughout the entire women's tournament that that's exactly when the tides changed for South Carolina. Whenever they can get Malaysia Fulali in alongside Chloe Kitts, it changed everything. Now, to me, it made sense for her to stay off the bench. And maybe in her junior season, she was going to be slotted in as a starter, but you really needed that scoring punch off the bench. And now they don't have it, but they also might not need it because South Carolina did actually go ahead and transfer in the best scorer in the nation, last season's best scorer. So I could be wrong in all that I said, but I do think that Malaysia Fulwali would have had a blast staying with South Carolina. And I wish that the conversation wasn't that, oh, she needs to leave because she's so much more than what Don was allowing her to be. But no, like, you have to understand, you have to play a role. Malaysia's not the biggest guard, so she was really not going to stay on the floor at any given time, and she's not a great defender, so you couldn't stay on the floor always if you couldn't defend and play make at a high level. You can score really well, but sometimes you can get walled off in your scoring. South Carolina would have been able to hide that. Now you go to LSU and alongside Flage, so you will have a 1-2 punch there with Kim Mulkey, but the grass isn't always greener. And on the other side of things, Kennedy Carter, who in my opinion, is one of the more exciting guards to watch in the WNBA. One of the more exciting guards. She's been a very exciting guard since high school. We've known her name since high school. Kennedy Carter has had a storied or troubled history in the WNBA. We're very familiar with that. I don't think she should be out the league right now. I think she should have been an early WNBA free agent signing. Somehow, some way, she's out the league right now, and it's kind of pissing me off. In my opinion, it feels like she's being blackballed because she was essentially put at the face of the Caitlin Clark drama that happened last WNBA season. Caitlin Clark comes in and rightfully so is deserving of so many accolades, so much of the praise, and so much of the valuation that the WNBA and women hoops in general has acquired has come at the heels of Caitlin Clark's prominence. Shout out Caitlin Clark. However, the league and certain fans and certain media made it very apparent that they expected the rest of the women in the WNBA to bow down to Caitlin Clark. They expected them to play nicely with Caitlin Clark and let Caitlin Clark cook, which that's probably already trademark. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and claim that. But they really expected all these women who, from the moment they turned 5, probably, who've been hooping since very young and have been the best in the game at wherever level they've been at from a very young age, they expected them to lay down and allow Caitlin Clark to walk all over them. Them women ain't them women don't go like that. And if you ever watched the WNBA prior to last season, you knew that these women were feisty. You knew that these women were rough. You knew that these women weren't soft. The WNBA is not a soft sport. In fact, I just talked about how so many folks have been clamoring for the NBA to be more physical, more rough, and the WNBA is the league that has been that. You talk about Diana Taurasi getting in everybody, any and everybody's face. At some point, Diana Taurasi kissed someone because they were in her face. The league has always been tough. The league has always been rough. And last season, Kenny Carter, who was on the Sky, and then of course we had this built-up rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Kenny Carter did not care about none of that. She just wanted to hoop. And she wanted to, and the thing about Kenny Carter though, is that she hoops like she's playing street ball a lot of times. And she did hip check Caitlin Clark at some point. She did get in Caitlin Clark's face. And that's just competitiveness. That's maybe even taking it a little too far, but it's really all competitiveness. And that's what we want from any type of basketball player. We want competitiveness. Caitlin Clark didn't go ahead and start whining about it. She got up and started getting back at Kennedy Carter. She got up and started getting back at Angel Reese. She got up and got back at whoever else checked her. However, the league, media, and fans felt like Kennedy Carter had committed murder in some ways. So many talking points were about, hey, they need to get her out the league, or hey, like she should be suspended for how she. People who were being hyper aggressive, which I don't even think there was hyper aggression. I think there was proper aggression, just the bigger spotlight on Caitlin Clark, so that anything that was done towards her was highlighted and was magnified. But so many times it was yo, we need to get Kennedy Carter out of here. Like Kennedy Carter can't be doing that. She needs to be suspended. She should know to protect that. She should be protecting the WNBA's prize and possession in Caitlin Clark, that they should be worshiping the ground that Caitlin Clark walks on. And I gotta let y'all know, y'all gotta be for real. That was never going to happen. That was never going to be the case. The NBA didn't do that with Michael Jordan. The NBA didn't do that with LeBron. The NBA didn't do that with Victor Wembanyama. The NBA has never done that. The WNBA has never done that. No professional sport will allow someone to come in and immediately expect everyone to bow down to them. Maybe I saw Winning Time, so maybe it happened with Magic and Bird at some time, but that doesn't exist now. We want our guys and our gals to be extremely competitive, and that's what I believe Kennedy Carter was doing. That's what I believe the entire WNBA has been doing prior to so many of the new fans getting there. So to me, it feels like Kennedy Carter is being blackballed because she had the audacity to play Caitlin Clark really rough and tough. That's not okay. What makes it suck even more is that the Sky got rid of their head coach last season, Teresa Witherspoon, Teaspoon, who was a WNBA legend, and they also did not re-sign Kennedy Carter. They brought in someone else, Ariel Atkins, who I love. Ariel Atkins, she's from my Mystics. Ariel Atkins, who can replicate in a lot of ways what Kennedy Carter provided. In fact, also provide defense that Kennedy wasn't that great at. But Kennedy and Teaspoon can't both be the issue in Chicago. There's a lot going on there, and I don't like it. I don't like how they treated Teaspoon. I don't like how the WNBA is treating Kennedy Carter right now. So let's fix that. Kennedy currently is hooping, or in the offseason, she killed it in the China League where she was MVP there. She just signed with the Mexican League, and I know she's going to ball out there. And it just is baffling and absolutely ridiculous that one of the best women hoopers, one of the best guards in women hoops in this last decade, is not playing in the WNBA. Makes no sense to me. So let's fix that. We did just talk about collusion in the NFL draft when it came to Shadur Saunders. Maybe that wasn't collusion, but to me, this feels like collusion, and I don't like that. To round out the woman hoops talk, shout out Georgia Moore, who just got drafted to the Washington Mystics, who unfortunately today it was announced that she might have tore her ACL or has an ACL injury, and that really sucks. I was really excited to see the new look Mystics, who just drafted 3 incredible talents in the first round of the WNBA draft. I was really excited to see them ball out this season, and unfortunately, it's looking like Georgia won't be a part of that. So get well soon, Georgia. We're wishing you the best, and yeah. Okay, cool. Finally, the moment you've all been waiting for. What's in the bag? What's in the bag? What's in the bag is me just answering a few mailbag questions that were left in last week's episode. And here's the thing, I'm gonna try to keep them under 45 seconds. If I get past 45 seconds, I'm gonna cut off. That's it. But there is a contingency I have. If the question requires a little more thought or a deeper answer, I will press snooze and try to round it out within another 45 seconds. Can we do that? Cool. Let's get started. The first question I have here is, what do you see Giannis doing now that Dame tore his Achilles? Well, I don't know. I said it earlier. I'm not too sure what exactly Giannis is going to do. Giannis has teased the Bucks, teased the fans, teased the media for the last couple of years that he might be on the way out. But he signed the extension this last off season, which I hated the fact that he did. I don't know what Giannis is going to do. They're done. The Pacers won, game five, so Bucks are home now. I think Giannis probably does the same thing he's been doing, which is tease, like, "Hey, I might leave," but ultimately sticks around but Milwaukee's been the only thing he's known in America. It's been the only thing he's known in his adult life. So I think he stays, but I would love to see him somewhere else, maybe Miami or Golden State, but they have Jimmy now. Question number two is, what next extra steps does OKC need to do to continue dominating? To be honest with you, not much. I think that what they showed in the Grizzlies series was that they can win any type of game. Of course, they will have a much steeper hill to climb when they face the Nuggets or the Clippers next round, and ultimately whenever they face the Wolves or the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals, whoever comes out of all of that. And of course, whoever they face in the Eastern Conference Finals will be a tough matchup. But I think that they show that they can win any type of game. They know all of their roles. They are the Bat family, like I said last week. I think they got it. I think they can keep it. I just think they need to remain focused, and they can't find themselves down 29 again. I think they'll handle all of that. It's interesting to see how Shea's play has been a little inconsistent in these playoffs, but that's what you expect in tougher series where the referees let a little. That's the time. Question three is, which team down 3-1 has a legit chance to still win their series? Okay, so by the time you're watching or listening to this, the Celtics beat the Magic, the Pacers beat the Bucks, so we still have the Knicks over the Pistons in a 3-2 series currently, and we have the Wolves over the Lakers in a 3-1 series, and the Warriors over the Rockets in a 3-1 series. If I was to rank in order of who I think has the best chance of coming back down 3-1, I would go Lakers, I'd go Pistons, then I'd go Rockets. Those are the only three series with the 3-1 situation, and we already talked about the Nuggets. So yeah, I think I would go Lakers, Pistons, then Rockets. Lakers have the star power to do it. I don't think they will. Pistons have been the better team in my opinion in that series, so I think they have a chance. And then the Rockets, they tough hill to climb. Question number four is, guards often don't have the same level of consistency in the playoffs compared to their forward and center counterparts. How do you think some of the elite guards, such as Curry and Ant, achieve such consistency? And what are some steps or skills other playoff guards should take to be in that consistency range? That's a loaded question. It's a long question. So there might be a snooze here, but let's try to get it under 45 seconds. To be honest with you, I think it goes back to what I said earlier about Ant conditioning. Last season, I don't think Ant was conditioned to withstand a long playoff run, and I think that showed itself in the Western Conference Finals. This season, however, this playoff run so far, I think he's conditioned himself throughout the regular season to last in tough, gritty games in the playoffs. He still has his legs in the fourth quarter, and that's really dope to see. I think the same thing for Stephen Curry, who has been widely known as the most conditioned, the best conditioned athlete in the NBA. He's got the conditioning, but they also both know how to get to their spots. They know how the game changes up for them in the playoffs and how they can still consistently find their spots, their tough spots in the regular season and in that playoffs, which a lot of guards can't do. But if you do want to become a better and a more consistent guard in the playoffs, you got to know your spots and you also got to know that, hey, look, I have to make sure I am exerting this energy at this part of the game, also reserving enough energy to be crucial in these moments of the game. So I think a lot of guards don't have that. I think forwards and centers oftentimes don't have to play as fast or as hard as those guards, or don't have as much responsibility offensively as those guards do. So that helps them out in a lot of ways, but I do think it's conditioning and picking your spots. The last question, I actually missed a playoff series actually, and that's my bad. 100 men versus one gorilla. Who do I have? Give me them gorilla in five. Let me get the gorilla in five. I think it's preposterous that we think that 100 men can kill a silverback gorilla. I just heard something that the biggest silverback gorilla in history was 7'4" and weighed over 400 pounds. Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Gorillas in five. Gorilla in five. Not even gorillas. Shout out to the band, but gorilla in five. Okay, that brings us to the end of this episode of Shot Makers. If you enjoyed yourself, if you enjoyed anything that I said, if you disliked anything I said, I'd love if you left a comment down below. Go ahead and leave me some questions as well. And also, give this video a like, a share, and hopefully this channel will subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one.